Hey YouTube, it's Marquita, and today I am here to bring you guys a different type of video from the videos you've been accustomed to seeing on this channel. I've done a lot of sit-down videos before, but they're typically about my marriage or primarily about parenthood, motherhood, raising Riley, and other things. But today's video isn't going to be like that. I would like to share a story with you guys, something that is really difficult for me to share, but I feel like it's really important for me to share it. I'm here to break the silence and to also break the stigma that surrounds this particular issue. This issue affects over 350 million people worldwide, and women are more likely to experience it. And it's something that I've struggled with for the majority of my life. But for the past 10 years, it has really been a central focus in my life. And that issue is depression. You may be wondering, why am I making a video now of all times? My life seems pretty darn great. We just had a brand new baby and we just bought a house. And you know, that's the mass appeal sometimes of social media. We're able to put our best faces forward at all times. We're able to fabricate and create these lives that look almost perfect. And while I've never strived to do that, I think that it's also important for me to show a side and to be vulnerable about some things that I've experienced and that I've struggled with throughout my life, so that it can hopefully help someone else. The reason why I'm filming this video right before Mother's Day is because 10 years ago, this very weekend, I almost gave in to my depression. I almost let depression win, and I almost wasn't here. Yes, I'm talking about suicide. While I didn't have an actual act of suicide, I did have a plan. I let depression come in and tell me that I was worthless and that life would just be better if I wasn't in it. And I'm not here to give you some motivational speech about how X, Y, or Z saved my life, or how you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps and I'm a living testament, because that's not the case. I want to give a disclaimer before I get into this video that my experience is not the standard. Everybody is different. Everyone's depression looks different. Everyone's anxiety looks different. Everyone's experiences are different, no matter their diagnoses. There can be two people sitting next to each other that have the same diagnoses, and they can be experiencing those things very differently. And so I don't want anyone to take this video and go back to someone that you may know in your life and say, well, so-and-so experienced depression in this way, or for you to even judge your own experience if you happen to struggle with depression. So I want to lay out what the things are that I struggle with on a daily basis. And those things are depression, generalized anxiety, panic disorder, and obsessive compulsive disorder. Those things have probably always been present in my life. It started when I was really young, and I'm not going to get into all of the reasons why, but they involve things that have to do with bullying, sexual assault by a peer and sexual assault by a family member, and just general worthlessness, not feeling confident about myself. And so it's been something that I've always experienced. But the catalyst for all of these things, and the landslide or cave-in or implosion of my life, occurred 10 years ago in January of 2007, when my firstborn daughter, Imani Joy, passed away. I'm trying to think of a word that can describe what I was feeling at that time, and all I can think of is like a black pit of despair. I just fell into this hole that I just couldn't seem to crawl or climb or claw my way out of. Those years were very, very dark for me. Mother's Day of 2007 kind of started it all. I was already really depressed. I didn't know how to cope. It was really difficult for me to reach out to anyone because my family members and friends and church members at the time, everyone had made these statements about how it'll be fine, your baby's gonna live, she'll be great, don't worry about it, the Lord's got her, and other sentiments. And then she wasn't, and it wasn't. The situation wasn't okay, and I was 20 years old burying my firstborn child. And I'd already had depression telling me that life just wasn't worth living. And I made a plan that I didn't need to be here. I really had thought about it for a long time. And so it was really difficult to be able to reach out and felt like I have someone to discuss those things with that would be able to hear me and to understand what I was saying and to understand that I was crying out for help. Being a Black woman and being a Black woman who was raised in a very strong Christian household and had my entire circle be people who had similar experiences, it was difficult for me to reach out to them and say, I'm struggling with depression. And in my community, you just didn't. You prayed about it. You'll be fine. You'll pray about it. You'll recover. We don't talk that way. You know, it's weak for you to talk about wanting to kill yourself, or it's weak for you to even have thoughts of depression. Everything will be fine. It'll work itself out. And as much as that sounds great and nice, that's not the reality of depression. That's not the reality of anxiety or any other mental illness. Y'all, this video is hard. Once you're seeing it, it'll be all nice and packaged up and it'll look the way that it's supposed to, but I've had to stop and start this video so many times because this is hard. So many people say that it's nothing to be ashamed of, there's nothing to be embarrassed of, but the fact of the matter is, if that was the case, there wouldn't be a stigma around mental illness. And there is a huge stigma around mental illness. I'm supposed to be strong. I'm supposed to, as a mother and a wife, I'm supposed to have it all together. And so to make this video is really difficult for me. For the months leading up to Mother's Day, I had already been feeling like life was just almost unbearable. And I was feeling so depressed and distraught because my daughter had passed away. And to be 20 years old and to have the gravity of burying your firstborn child was too much for me to handle. It was hard to get out of the bed every morning. I was getting in trouble, honestly, at work because I just couldn't stay focused. Being put on the deployment list because I didn't deserve, apparently, according to my superiors, I didn't deserve the 6 months that was required for someone to bond with a child because my child was dead. And when I say that, I'm not paraphrasing. Those were literally words that I heard come out of a commanding officer's mouth in reference to me and why I should be deployed. I spent the majority of my time alone. I was isolated and I was stationed somewhere where I didn't have any family nearby. I didn't know anyone that I was stationed with because I got moved there because of my daughter's heart complications. And I just spent all my time either at work or alone in my house just crying and missing my daughter so much and wishing that it could have been me instead of her. And hindsight, I know that that was part of the stages of grief, but at the time I couldn't see it that way. For those out there who believe that you can pray it away, you can just snap out of it, you know, think about someone who has an ailment, and it sounds cliche, but something like cancer, you can't just snap out of those illnesses. It's the same thing with mental illness. You can't just snap out of it. As much as someone would love to, you just can't. It's not possible. And so in those black hole years, depression was right there. It was just yelling in my ear that you are no good, you are worthless, life would be much better if you weren't here. If I would mess up at work, I would hear that voice in my head just reminding me of like this person kind of that you drag around with you, but it also is like your worst critic. It's always right there in your ear reminding you that like I'm here and I'm here to tell you that you are no good and you just shouldn't be here. There's nothing in this world that I've wanted to be more than a mother. And the fact that I had finally had that and then it was just snatched away from me was a lot for me to take, and I just felt like I just couldn't bear it anymore. Now for me, there's a difference between the black hole and just general depression, because the black hole was where there was so much despair. I didn't want to get out of bed. I couldn't take a shower. I didn't want to take care of myself. I didn't want to live. And then depression is something where you can just kind of like live, you can truck along, but it's still also really, really difficult. It's like having a weight on you all the time. Somehow you find the strength and the courage to manage to do it. And so I've been in and out of therapy for the past 10 years. I've used a combination of medications. I've used a combination of coping strategies, and those things helped, but it was still really difficult to be able to manage it. But I will say that those programs gave me the tools to be able to start climbing my way out of the black hole. I would like to say that from 2010 or so to the present, that I'm in something that I would like to call recovery. Just like if I was an addict, just like if I was an alcoholic, I will always be depressed. I will always have depression. I will always have anxiety. They are within me, and they're not who I am. They're just a part of me. They're just like how I have locks and that my skin is brown and my eyes are brown. It's just a part of who I am. It does not define me. It's just a part of who I am as Marquita. And so recovery for me has been a challenge. Recovery has been something that I've had to constantly and consistently work on. I have to reach out to people. I have to let them know how I'm feeling, because depression is isolating, and having anxiety on top of that is incredibly isolating. It tells you that nobody wants to deal with that. No one wants to hear that you're having a hard time. No one wants to hear that you're overwhelmed. Just keep it inside. And that's the way the depression works. It wants you to not feel like you can reach out to people, and that you should just keep it inside, because then it'll just keep bottling up, and then, awful things happen. It's not like going la 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 is gonna stop someone from committing suicide. Instead, if you're someone who doesn't suffer with depression or anxiety, but you have a loved one that you suspect may, or that you know has a diagnosis, get versed in it. Be the first person to know, like, there's something going on. Do you want to talk about it? Can we, make a list of resources for those of you who experience depression and anxiety and know that it can get really bad, and you need for those around you and your support network to be able to support you. Have a list of warning signs for them, and then have a list to go along with that warning signs of things that they need to do to support you. Whether that's making sure that you're taking your medication, whether that's making sure that you're seeing your therapist, your psychiatrist, your psychologist, your life coach, whoever it is, making sure that you're compliant with those things, and you also making sure that you're compliant with those things. I'm not embarrassed to say that I am in therapy. I'm not embarrassed to say that I take supplements and medication to help with my depression and my anxiety, because I want to be here for my children. My life was saved by a combination of things. On that night, Mother's Day 2007, my really good friend Dwayne saved my life. He was the one who, from miles away in Baltimore, Maryland, knew that something was off with me and called the police and had them come to my house. From then on, my mom helped save my life. She dropped everything going on in her life and made sure that she was there to support me. She used to come to my hospitalizations. I used to know that I could pick up the phone and I could let her know that I was struggling. There was just sometimes that I would try to, you put on this mask to try to make yourself feel like you're better and to present to the world like, hey, I'm okay. And I remember that I used to pick up the phone some days and I try to put on that mask, and my mom would just say, what's wrong? What's the matter? And I would just start crying. And you know what? Those are the moments that could have been, I could have hung up that phone with someone who was oblivious and decided no one cares about me, and let depression say, nope, nobody cares about you. You shouldn't be here anymore. And my daughters have saved my life. Riley saved my life. My first living child that lived past 19 days. She saved my life. My wife has saved my life, to be there for me and to know when I'm upset, to know when I'm hurting, and to recommend, hey, you should probably get back into therapy. Hey, have you been taking your supplements? All of these things have saved my life. There isn't one thing that saved my life. For other people, it may be prayer, it may be religion, it may be intensive therapy every week or 5 days a week. Whatever it takes to climb out of that hole, do it. Because again, as cliche as it may sound, you are loved and you are needed here in this world. And the world would be a much dimmer place without each of your lights. But you have to believe that, and you have to be able to reach out to people. So for me today, how am I? I'm struggling with postpartum depression right now. But I've built this toolbox of resources that say, hey, we love taking a bath and watching Netflix. Go take a bath and watch some Netflix. Go out to the movies, laugh. I love to laugh. If I'm feeling really depressed, my depression tells me, turn on a movie that's gonna make you cry. Nope, not gonna listen to you. I also don't give into that thing where your depression says, listen to really sad music. Because sometimes you get all wrapped up in this. You're listening to really sad music, you're watching really sad things, and then you're like, you know what? Why bother? Why does it even matter? And so instead, I try to turn that around. I try to make sure to do things for myself to keep my cup filled, because as a mother, we just pour and pour and pour and pour into other people's cups. And then you look around and your cup's empty and you're on E, you're depleted, and you're wondering why your anxiety and depression is so high. Sometimes you really just have to put yourself first and say, hey family, I love you, but you got to take a back seat, because right now I need to be the important one so that I can continue to be here, so that I can continue to contribute to this family. And so at the end of this video, I'm going to list some resources. I will put the suicide hotline. I'm going to put the suicide hotline also for veterans, and a couple other resources that have been helpful. Again, this video didn't really have an order to it, and I apologize for that if it was kind of all over the place. It was hard to make this video, but I needed to commemorate the 10-year anniversary of the day that I almost didn't make it, the day that I almost let depression win, and to celebrate the fact that 10 years later, I'm sitting here, and while I may not be perfect, and while I may not be 100% happy and whole all the time, that I'm here, and I'm so happy that I lived to see my daughters. I'm so happy that I stayed here and stuck around to meet my wife and to see what life is going to be like, and to continue that, and to one day grow old. There was a time in my life where I didn't think that I would live to see 25. So I'm so happy to be sitting here at 31, to have two beautiful, healthy daughters, to have a daughter and a son that protect me as my guardian angels, to have a wife that loves me, and a mom and a brother that are here to support me. But most importantly, to know that I love myself, and that I would do whatever it takes to stay out of that black hole. Depression is hard. Depression ruins families. Depression rips people apart. But we have to fight against it and show depression that we are stronger than it is. And I know it's really cliche, but please reach out to someone in your life. Please, if you're struggling with depression, please let someone know. Your light, your life is important, and it's needed in this world. And while right now, if you're struggling, it may not feel like it, know that it is. Please be kind to one another. We need far more kindness in this world than is currently being displayed. Take care of yourselves. Thank you so much for listening and for your continued support and your love. I wanted to give a shout out and a huge thank you to a fellow YouTuber. She goes by Black Girl Crazed. I will put her channel information in the description box below. but her whole channel is about breaking the stigma that surrounds Black women and women of color and what it's like to suffer with mental illnesses and facing those head on. I will be very honest in saying that her channel and watching her courage and her strength help inspire this video. So thank you so much, Myri. I really appreciate your strength. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.